So today we're going to talk about informational interviewing. So first off, what is it? It's you talking with a professional or someone in a career of interest to learn more about what their life is really like. So it's a chance for you to build a relationship with someone and get to know more of those deep burning questions that you might not otherwise be able to figure out by looking at their LinkedIn profile, for example. So why do we do it? It helps us to, as I said before, build a relationship and get to know someone new. We know that many people get their jobs through networking, and networking is really just building relationships, getting to know other people so that when they're thinking about a job, they might think of you or encourage you to apply. It also enables you to ask those questions that you cannot get answered otherwise. So many of you have probably noticed that when you look at someone's LinkedIn profile, there are lots of things that aren't on there. Or even when you look at a company or organization's website, it's really hard to actually figure out what is their corporate culture like. Like, what is it really like working there? Because they're often giving you this like rosy picture of what they want you to think it's like, but you want to know from people who really work there, what is it actually like, and do I want to work here? And finally, you can get some insider tips on what to do if you do want to pursue that career path. If you are thinking about that field, they can give advice on what's changing in that field, what would be helpful or meaningful for you. When you go see a career coach or a career counselor, we're generalists, so we can help you in thinking about a lot of things, but it's very meaningful for you to talk to people in that actual field because this is their lived experience. They really are experts in this area. Most of you are on board and like, yep, that's great. I know all of those things, but how do I find another person? Like, how do I find someone to talk to? I'm going to give you 3 strategies that might work for you. We're not going to talk about the LinkedIn Alumni Tool in depth because there's an entire video dedicated to the LinkedIn Alumni Tool, so check it out. That is the primary way that I use and recommend students use to find someone because you have something in common. You both have gone to UT. Outside of that, think about the places that you've done your experiential learning. You can talk with them and learn more about their experiences and also talk with them to learn who else might be in their network. So it is a very helpful thing to do anytime you're at your experiential learning site to get to know your coworkers and the people who work there. But it's also meaningful to share with them, especially with your supervisor, what you're interested in. Because they might know people who work in those other industries or areas and can help introduce you and build relationships. And also, we're at a huge campus. So your faculty members, staff members, other campus contacts can serve as great additional resources. Many professional-oriented clubs and organizations actively do the work for you by bringing in professionals to speak. So they do group informational interview sessions, basically. So those can all be beneficial. I especially encourage you, consider talking to your ULN coordinator or the experiential learning team. We are here, we have lots of connections and people that we know, and we're happy to help you in building your relationships. So generally, the primary area of concern, once you've found a person that you want to talk to, is how you actually make the ask. It can feel weird or like uncomfortable. What I try to remember is to think about what it would be like if you received an email like this, right? So here's a sample email that I crafted, right? If I'm a professional and I receive an email like this, it's flattering, right? We generally like to talk about ourselves and enjoy sharing, and it feels nice to know that a student's done a little bit of work and they have interest and they just are asking for a little bit of my time, especially in our current context. It's not a big ask. It's helpful to remember that it's not an imposition. It's not annoying to people. It's fairly standard. We all as professionals know that this exists, so no one is going to be caught off guard by your request. When you're making the ask, ideally send it via email and ideally give them some context. So introduce yourself, talk about how you found the organization, why you want to speak with them, and in particular, write like a time frame, 15 minutes to learn more about your career path and advice you have for future marketing professionals. One really exciting tip that's emerged in the last few years is instead of having to go back and forth about someone's availability, there are brilliant programs like Calendly and Bookings where you can actively just set and sync your calendar so that it shows appointments available whenever you want to be available, so that someone doesn't have to go back and forth with you thinking about when I can schedule. They can just click on the time that works best for them. The questions are another big component, so thinking about what you actually want to ask. An informational interview is certainly not something you want to just be like very spontaneous and you haven't thought things through and you don't have any questions prepared. You generally want to have questions prepared and you want to demonstrate that you have thought about it. So this person is giving you some time, which is a precious commodity for many people. So what you can do is do a little bit of preparation in advance. These are really basic questions on the slide, but I would encourage you to think, what are the burning questions that I have that I can't get answered by looking online? So if you want to know about corporate culture, ask them, what is the corporate culture like? What is your experience like? Would you recommend your company to other people, right? So you can ask those more in-depth questions to really get a sense of what their lived experience is like and what you are curious about. The questions are also a chance for you to make a good impression on this other person. So the more that you've prepared, the more that you ask questions that are specific to the industry, that all demonstrates your knowledge, your expertise, and your interest, which is great, right? So I encourage you to think about what questions you want to ask. It is fine to ask the questions on this slide, right? These are common interview questions for informational interviews because they are helpful generally. They are things that we want to know, but you craft your own specific questions that you're interested in. There are only two things that are off the table when it comes to an informational interview. So when you've reached out to someone, you have invited them to speak with you for a very particular reason, and that's to learn about their career path. So if you ask them for a job or internship, that violates that trust. That generally doesn't feel good, right? You feel kind of ambushed as the person who's being interviewed. We've talked about some questions you can ask instead, right? It's still possible for you to get more insider information. You're just not asking them for an internship. So you might ask things like, what do you really look for when you're hiring new students? Like thinking about what I could do, what would you recommend I do in my remaining time at UT to make myself really marketable for entering this industry? What you haven't done is say, give me a job, but you have gotten meaningful information that's relevant to you. And generally, those are the questions I ask towards the end, right? I wouldn't ask that at the beginning of the informational interview. So don't ask them for a job. If they bring it up, by all means, they've opened the door, so don't worry about it. You just don't want to bring that up. And don't ask them about their salary. So that tends to be a taboo topic. So in general, I avoid that. But everything else is really fair game. Finally, you want to end by thanking them for their time and following up. So do send a follow-up. Make it tailored and specific to the person. This is a great chance for you to summarize a little bit about what you learned, that you're grateful about it, or even some next steps that you discovered after talking to them, right? You can share those as well. And of course, connect with them on LinkedIn if you haven't already. So if you have more questions about informational interviews, how to do them, I really encourage you to take a look at our other LinkedIn videos in particular, or visit your ULN coordinator for more information.